Hello, everyone. Welcome to How to Read Chinese Poetry podcast. I'm Zong-qi, the program host. In this podcast program, my colleagues and I aim to introduce cutting-edge scholarship on Chinese poetry to a broad general audience. We will present 52 episodes covering the major poetic genres developed over China's long history. Each episode features close reading of one or more of the best-known Chinese poems, with an aim to illuminate their literary greatness and cultural significance. For all the discussed poems, Chinese text, English translation, Romanization, and brief notes are provided at our website, howtoreadchinesepoetry.com. By following the 52 episodes, listener will gain a bird's-eye view of the thematic, formal, and generic evolution of Chinese poetry from antiquity to the modern era. Instruct and delight is what we wish to accomplish in each talk. Without further ado, let's begin. This episode is a continuation of our discussion on the Book of Poetry. In the first two episodes, we look at some poems from these earliest poetical collections and show how, before and during Confucius' time, Shijing poems were recited or performed by state envoys as a primary means of conveying diplomatic intentions. Fast forward some 400 years to the middle point of the Han Dynasty, and we find the Book of Poetry transformed from a collection of poetical expression for oral diplomatic occasions into a collection of heavily commented written texts intended to teach Chinese rulers and their subjects what constitutes moral versus immoral conduct, good versus bad governance. This transformation was purposely engineered by Han commentator in response to Emperor Wu's elevation of Confucian doctrine to state ideology, while banishing all other schools of thought. Thanks to Han commentators' reinterpretation, the Book of Poetry, along with other 5 texts, became Confucian canon. This didactic reinterpretation of the Book of Poetry is judged unfavorably by most modern scholars, who accuse Han commentators of reducing emotionally rich poems to dry moral and political allegories. While it is true, Han commentary always ends in dull allegorization, the allegoriizing process itself, as well as the strategies employed, displays a beautiful exercise of imagination too often overlooked. Let us look at some Han commentators' clever sleights of hand in reinterpreting 3 poems. The first poem is Osprey, the first and the most discussed and most anthologized of the 305 Shijing poems.
Ospreys. Guan guan cry the ospreys on the islet in the river. Graceful is this fair maiden, a fine bride for a gentleman. Thick and thin grows the water mallow. Left and right one gets it in the flow. Graceful is this fair maiden. Awake or asleep, I am seeking her. Seeking though I was, I could not possess her. Awake or asleep, I was longing for her. Alas, longing and forlorn, I tossed and turned in bed. Thick and thin grows the water mallow. Left and right one plucks it. Graceful is this fair maiden. with zither and zithern, I will befriend her. Thick and thin grows the water mallow, left and right one gathers it. Graceful is this fair maiden, with bells and drums I will gladden her.
The poem depicts the wooing of graceful young woman by a male speaker. We are delighted by an interesting patchwork of snapshots. First, a graceful woman set against singing Osprey on an island. Then another picture of her harvesting water plants, punctuated by images of the speaker, tossing and turning in bed, pining for the woman day and night, and hoping to gladden her with music. Commenting on this poem, the anonymous author of the Prefaces to Book of Poetry, the most important of Han commentators, writes, quote, Osprey celebrates the finding of a virtuous woman to match a law. She worried about the worthy not being promoted and did not indulge in her own sensuality. She grieved over the neglect of the beautiful, yearned for the worthy, and did not harbor anything that is against the good. This is the meaning of Osprey. Osprey is the beginning of the heirs. It is that by which the customs of the world are influenced, and the husband-wife relationship is rectified. Hearing this commentary and its obvious disconnect, one may wonder if this was meant for another poem. The gender of the central subject has changed from male to female, the theme from courtship to husband-wife relations. But it's no mistake. It is indeed a commentary on Osprey. So what's the purpose of changing the speaker's gender and taking the poem as a description of one woman courting another? Is this a description of lesbian relationship in ancient China? A modern Western reader could wonder. The answer is, of course, no. The female speaker is courting a graceful woman, not for herself, but as a concubine for her husband. The female speaker is identified as Tai Si, the main wife of King Wen, the founder of the Zhou dynasty. So her courtship takes on a special moral significance. Perfect harem management. As the main wife, she curbs her own sensuality and rose above jealousy to find worthy concubine for her husband king. This undoubtedly helped to put the royal house in perfect order. No small feat indeed. Since antiquity, Chinese kings and emperors kept dozens of concubines, meticulously ranked and titled. It is not hard to imagine how a harem plagued by jealousies and intrigues could easily wreak havoc with the royal house and by extension the dynasty. Conversely, one could reason that a virtuous, jealousies-free main wife would exert a stabilizing influence over all the concubines and ensure peace in both the royal house and the dynasty. In measuring up to this ideal of a perfect queen wife, Tai Si, in turn, was seen as a living tribute to King Wen's own moral virtues. And together, they became the perfect model for husband-wife bond. This is, I believe, the line of reasoning behind the commentator's decision to change the speaker's gender and the nature of courtship. turning the poem into a glorifying portrait of King Wen's wife. We might wonder if such gender switching is possible when interpreting a Western language poem. Not so easily. The clear gender distinction in pronouns, and even nouns in some Western languages, closes the space for such a gender shift, as here made by the author of the preface. In classical Chinese, by contrast, pronouns are not gendered, let alone other parts of speech. What's more, they are often omitted, especially in poetry. The preface's author may be the first to consciously exploit gender ambiguity inherent in the Chinese language. As in this and many other poems, in the next episode, I will discuss a case of love poem turned into a poem of political condemnation through gender switching and other means. I hope you enjoyed the talk. Let us relax and listen to a reading of the poem in Mandarin.
诗经，周南，关雎。关关雎鸠，在河之洲。窈窕淑女，君子好逑。参差荇菜，左右流之。窈窕淑女，寤寐求之。求之不得，寤寐思服。悠哉悠哉，辗转反侧。参差荇菜，左右采之。窈窕淑女，琴瑟友之。参差荇菜，左右芼之。窈窕淑女，钟鼓乐之。